What is going on, guys? What is going on? My name is Randy. You're watching the Randy Talks Mets channel on YouTube, here on X as well. And I am joined by SNYTV contributor Anthony McCarron. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Randy. Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate you coming on. And, we're here to talk some Mets baseball. We're here to get into some baseball. I know the Knicks are about to be on as well, but man, let's have some fun, man. Let's have some fun. So definitely, we'll get it started here with the Mets 2025 season. Overall, with the review, what did you think of the season and how it went? Because in the first, signing Juan Soto, a big time free agent, one of the biggest free agents, and then David Stearns, he signs a Griffin Canning, a Frankie Montas, a Jose Siri, these guys, and then you see they didn't make the playoffs. But David Stearns in the trade deadline made some moves to improve the team, and that still didn't work at the end of the day. So how do you assess overall the season?
Well, look, Randy, going into that season, I had super high hopes for the Mets. I thought they were pretty stacked, and I thought that they were going to, get enough. Obviously they had some pitching injuries, but I thought guys were going to come back and they could make moves at the deadline that would, impact them. And this was clearly a playoff team in my mind, and I even believed down to the last weekend that they would find a way to squeak in. And they didn't do it. And the only thing you can think about this season to me is that it was a huge disappointment. The pitching didn't work out. The offense, overall the numbers were actually pretty good. But it was inconsistent during the season. There were some serious valleys there to go along with the peaks. And even when they were crushing as an offense, I can't get away from the August that they had, where they set all these club records in terms of offensive production, and they still finished 11-17 for the month.
That's a great point for
It's
sure.
crazy.
That
It's
that
crazy.
was so crazy, so crazy. I mean, it there was a lot of people, a lot of Met fans, they were talking about the hitting coach and the hitting coach again, the hitting coach, should they fire the hitting coach? Because they were winning games, right? But they had I believe there were 21 games over 500. So there were 45 and 24. So 21 games over 500, but they weren't like hitting altogether. The big four, or whatever you want to call it, the Fab Four, they just couldn't hit. Overall, what did you think about that? Because do you fire a hitting coach in that situation? Do you? It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I feel like Met fans really glommed on to the hitting coaches as some sort of a celebrated cause this year. I don't look at it in the same way, to be honest with you, Randy. I feel like coaches are often focal points for fans because they're not the stars of the team. So they can, you don't own the jersey of the hitting coach. So instead of blaming the guys who failed on the roster, and they obviously did because they didn't make the playoffs with that enormous payroll and those high expectations, then the guys who are behind the scenes are the ones whose fault it is. And, the
Yeah,
millionaires are the ones
yeah.
that blew this season for the Mets, not the hitting coaches. You can say whatever you want about their part in it, and that's fine. In a season like that, what happened to the hitting coaches generally does happen. Their changes are made when it's so disappointing like that. So ultimately, I'm not hung up on the hitting coaches.
Mhm.
They had enough talent to get it done, regardless of the job of the people who were behind the scenes were, and they did not get it done. And the lion's share of the fault, to me, is on the roster. You want to blame David Stearns for moves made and not made? Yeah, that there's some blame there too.
Mhm.
But I felt like fans, at least when I interacted with them a lot, they were bogged down on the hitting coaches. And,
Yeah.
why don't you bog down on some of the guys who didn't play well and
Yeah.
who
And
slumped
speaking
for
of
a
those
long
guys
time?
who didn't speaking of those guys who didn't play well, Kodai Senga, a David Peterson, a Sean Manaea, those guys really collapsed in the second half of the season, and it put the Mets in a horrible position. And I know it's tough. Like nobody, I don't think David Stearns saw Senga, David Peterson, who's been very, very consistent from the beginning of the season, from the first half. And then you see a guy like Sean Mania. He was depending on those guys to
Yeah.
deliver, and they just didn't deliver. What did you think about that? Was that a surprise to you?
It was. I mean, Peterson is a very talented pitcher, and I think he's going to be a good pitcher for the Mets for years to come, assuming that he is on the roster and not used as a trade chip this winter or in the near
Ooh.
future. But the thing with him was he was so good in 24, and so good in the first half in 25. But there was an innings jump coming there, and sometimes there's a boomerang effect with pitchers, and he looked like he was getting tired at the end of the season, and I think that impacted his performance. And he it's difficult there. Mania got hurt. It wasn't good when he came back. Senga was, had great numbers, but bad, great sort of standard pitching numbers early in the season. But the underlying numbers weren't as great, some of the contact numbers and that sort of thing. And then he got hurt, and then he was terrible afterwards, to the point where he wasn't even rosterable for long stretches, as the Mets sent him to the minors to figure
Mhm.
out what was happening. Um,
And and when you see a guy like a Nolan McLean in the minors, they call him up. I believe it was after August something. They call him up, but he brings this big boost to this rotation that a team that just couldn't pitch 6 innings, couldn't pitch 6 innings overall. It's crazy. Like a David Peterson, Sean Mania, Kodai Senga, they weren't giving you that. And a lot of Met fans were saying, why didn't they call up Nolan McLean before? Why did it take so long for them to call up Nolan McLean? Because I mean, you look at what he did, man. Look at what he
yeah,
did. Like,
only the Mets know the answer to that question, Randy. They
yeah,
they clearly should have called him up earlier. Um, but he was a revelation when he did come up, and
yes.
he is an incredibly talented guy. And he really showed something in this kind of second half of this season. He was an incredible bright spot for them. You can really dream big on him as well going forward here. He as a guy who was a two-way player in college, like, he hasn't been pitching only for all that long. I mean, he even hit in I think he hit in Double A. I think he had a home run in his last Double A at
He
bat
did. He
as a
did.
two-way player. And so this isn't even a guy who's been like pitcher only since he was 14 or something like that. So how much better can he get once he learns more of the nuance of the of the craft? It's so you can really let your imagination run wild on Nolan McLean, and he profiles as one of the most exciting things going into 2026 in all of Metsland to me. Right now, if I were deciding, he'd start opening day, assuming that he's healthy, and he would be the number one on the staff, unless they make a move. Which, by the way, and I know we'll get to this at some point, they
We
need to
definitely
make a
will.
move for a legit number one guy.
Yes, yes. No, no, you're right. Definitely. I mean, Nolan McLean looks special. In all my 28 years of living, I've never seen a guy like Nolan McLean. It just a spin rate, 3,300 RPM.
Right.
It's one of the most insane spin rates I've ever seen.
Well, and
And
when you talk about that, it's a great point, because there are plenty of guys in baseball now who can throw 99 and or 100 miles an hour. And so, like, as great a calling card as that is, he spins the baseball better, or at least with the best, and better in many cases, than almost anyone who's pitching. And that is an incredible strength to have for him. And in addition to that, he also looks like, he's 24 years old. He looks like he's been pitching in the majors for 10 years with his poise, and the moment was never too big for him. He never seemed to wobble. So yeah, I mean, we could call this the Randy Talks Mets about Nolan McLean review,
yeah,
and we could do
yeah.
we could do an hour on this.
We
That's how
definitely
good
could,
he is.
because he's so good. And like I said, the spin rate is amazing. But overall, just what you said, the poise, how he was so composed on the mound. I honestly love what I saw. He just looked like he looked like one of those big time aces, like a Tariq
Yeah.
Skubal, like a Zach Wheeler on the mound. Just overall the emotion and the poise and how he looked on the mound, so confident. Like he was a bulldog out there. That's what I really loved about Nolan McLean when it comes to that situation. But yeah, let's get right into the gritty here. Will Pete Alonso return in 2026 for the New York Mets? I mean, when I'll tell you his stats here.
Beautiful
Quick.
stat line this year. Great
Oh
stats.
yeah,
Yeah, he had a great year.
Absolutely great stats. He had a 272 average, 272. He is a Silver Slugger finalist as well. That is very, very impressive for a guy like Pete Alonso to have an average of 272, and then he had 38 home runs. He had 126 RBIs, an OPS of 871. That is a guy that the 2024 year was a down year. He only had 86 RBIs. He didn't even get to 100 RBIs, but he did his work. He did his work in the offseason and he got better. And this is a guy that's going to be 31 now. We know how the Mets feel about Pete Alonso. They want him back, but you've seen hesitance of David Stearns willing to go that long-term deal with Pete Alonso. What do you think about that? And do you see David Stearns giving him that long-term deal that he desires? Do you see that?
Well, there's a lot going on with the Pete Alonso question, Randy. Let me give you my favorite Pete stat from this past year. By the way, he had 80 extra base hits. There were 6 guys who had 80 extra base hits this year in the majors, and some of the other guys on the list are Ohtani and Judge, and ridiculous talents like that. So that's the kind of company that Pete keeps. Obvious, incredible offensive production there that the Mets would find very difficult to replace next year if he's not on the roster. Now, you alluded to it with his age. He's on the wrong side of 30. He is a first baseman whose athleticism will only be going the wrong way going forward. He's a DH in the future, and those aren't the kind of guys that like young GMs are drooling over. So, yeah. But so that's not great, that part. But I do think that the Mets as a whole recognize the sort of special relationship that Pete has with Met fans. I think they recognize that he's kind of an historical player with the franchise. And this is based on nothing, no reporting. This is my own imagination, which could be flawed. But my prediction of what happens is that Pete is back, that Steve Cohen sort of takes the reins on him and re-signs him in part as kind of a thank you to fans who showed out in 25. They set a Citi Field attendance record. He asked them to come. They came and they filled the ballpark a lot. And it was a great atmosphere out there. And I think that a majority of those people probably want Pete back, those fans. And I think that they'll probably be happy about it. Now, free agency is problematic for teams looking to retain their players, though, because obviously it's a free market. Everybody can be in on them, can be in on the player. And all it takes is one other owner who is like, oh, Pete, you want 7 years? Sure, that sounds great. Come on down. And if Pete is focused on something like that, I mean, obviously there was a report that he's, that's so early days in anything that would happen here, that's kind of the part of the negotiating as well. I'm sure the Mets put it out there that they would, there was a report that they would like Pete to DH more as soon as possible if he's back. And then, Pete's camp responded by saying, well, 7 years would be great. And so, the dance is already happening, Randy. And, but when other teams are involved, you don't have control in the way that you did when, they were on your roster and you could talk to them about an extension. And that was the only team that could talk, about an extension. And Pete and the Mets never got anything long-term done. And, now he's earned the right to shop himself around. Is somebody going to, get romanced by Pete's incredible slugging ability? Maybe.
I mean, he's absolutely one of the best sluggers in the game. Like you said, 80 extra base hits. That is insane. Only six
Crazy.
guys to do it.
It's
And
amazing.
this is a comment here from Sanders here. Cancel. What's going on, Sanders? How you doing? Stern should sign Josh Naylor for the first base and Kasumo Akamoto to play third base. What do you think about those guys when it comes to that? Do you think a Josh Naylor will be a substitution for a Pete Alonso if they don't get him?
I don't know the answer. I don't know much about Akamoto, to be honest with you, Randy. So I can't really give you any opinion on him.
Mhm.
I know he's a possibility on the market this year, so I have to look into him a little bit. But you know, Josh Naylor is a good player. He had a great postseason. I do like him because he's got a little bit of a stick his nose in kind of toughness. He's got a little bit of fire that I think the Mets could probably use. Kind of like a little poke. He seems like a
Yeah.
guy who's kind of poke you in the chest if you're his opponent, and be hard to play against. And those kinds of guys are invaluable. In fact, when you don't have them, you realize how much you would like to have one. So I mean, he's the second best behind Pete. He's the second best option on the free agent market. Is that a route that they go to solve first base? I don't know. If you're
Mhm.
not going to pay Pete to play first, and I'm not saying that Josh Naylor is going to get the same kind of money as Pete, but if you're not going to pay Pete to play first, and you're looking to fill first elsewhere, what happens to the sort of lower part of your own roster where Mark Vientos could be your first baseman
Mm.
too.
And
So there's a lot of moving parts here. Vientos could also be trade bait, to help rebuild the bullpen, which needs some serious work, or whatever it is. If he's a part of if he's one of the quote major league ready guys, if you
yeah,
want to try to get Tarek Skubal from the Tigers, and they want players who can play in the majors right now.
yeah,
Vientos certainly fits that bill. I know he didn't have the year that he wanted to have, or that Met fans wanted him to have, but he's
yeah.
also like not nothing.
No, no. Mark Vientos to me is a guy that he's a guy that I think could hit you around 25 home runs every single year. I think he has the ability to do that. This year I just didn't think he got the playing time. It was a lot of Beatty, it was a lot of Ronnie Mauricio, it was a lot of just overall three guys trying to play one
Yeah,
position,
I mean, and Vientos didn't perform well enough
and he didn't
he didn't
perform
deserve the
well.
playing time
Yeah,
for long stretches there,
yeah.
especially because those other guys can play the position defensively at a much, much higher level than he can.
Oh no! Oh, hands down for sure. And when it comes to Pete Alonso, I personally want him to come back. Um, I, I don't know if I want him to the Mets to pay them for 6 years, 7 years. I think to me, a good deal for Pete Alonso and the Mets would be a 5-year deal for 150. I think that would be reasonable from the New York Mets, and I think maybe they could go a 6 year. I think, like you said, Steve Cohen is going to get involved. I do want this guy back. His defense just it worries me. It does
Yeah,
worry me. The play that he had with Nolan McLean, that was a play that almost could have injured Nolan McLean, and that is one of our star pitchers right now. But Senga, you saw the
yeah,
play
that
with
was
Senga
yeah,
that hurt Senga. It was -9 in defensive runs in 2025. That is a stat that is alarming. That's alarming.
right,
I get it. He's
for
a
sure.
great slugger, but first base defense, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. And I want this guy to hurt our starting pitchers. But I love Pete. I love what he brings to the table. And I want him back. I do want him back. I just don't feel like they can wait forever for Pete Alonso. They have a lot of holes to fill. They have a lot of things to do. And I just don't think that they can wait for so much time for Pete Alonso. Hopefully this gets done sooner rather than later. But they have a lot of holes to fill, Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, they do have some work to do. I mean, Edwin
Yeah.
Diaz obviously is another bit. I would predict that he would get done much quicker than Pete, just like
Mm.
just like in the past,
Yeah.
as well. Because Pete will probably linger on there. I think a 5-year deal for Pete would be good. But I think if you're going to go shorter than what Pete apparently wants, then you're probably going to have to break the first base average annual value record. I think Vlad has that now at
Okay.
35 million plus after that contract that he signed, the $500 million extension. So
Hmm.
you might have to give Pete, 5 for 36, which would be 180, I guess. And, I, I mean, if he's going to get 80 extra base hits, it's probably worth it. But,
Yeah.
we'll see how that unfolds.
And we saw it in 2025. Pete Alonso and Juan Soto in the same lineup. And if
Yeah.
we could see Juan Soto in the same lineup with Pete Alonso for the next 5 years, count me in.
Yeah.
Count me in, man. Count me in. Now I want to get into some news that happened today. Recently, Francisco Lindor, that was reported that he had a surgery, and it was a debridement, believe elbow
Elbow
surgery, and it
debridement.
was
Yeah.
a
Cleanup.
debridement. What did you think about that? And do you think that led to any inconsistency when it comes to Francisco Lindor? I know there was the toe, but do you think the elbow was also a factor this season? I know it's a hard question, but what
Yeah,
do
I
you
don't know
think
the
about
answer to
that?
that, Randy. And I
Yeah,
couldn't give you an answer to that. That's something that
yeah,
Francisco will have to answer the next time he's available to
yeah.
media, or the Mets will have to answer
Hmm.
as well. I mean, the good news is that it doesn't seem to be impede him for next season, so that's positive. And look, I mean, you play baseball on a daily basis for as long as these guys do in their careers, not just for one season, but for many on top of each other. You're not in perfect shape. Uh,
Hmm.
so that these are one of the
And
things that happens. Hopefully he's fine and
yeah.
it doesn't impact him.
He had a very, I mean, he had to me, 267 average, 31 stolen bases, and then I believe it was 31 and 31. So both 31 home runs and 31 stolen bases. I think that was overall good, but there was some
Yeah.
inconsistency with his defense that cost the Mets a little bit there. But I think Lindor is a star, and I hope that he just keeps doing what he's doing, man. Because if he keeps doing what he's doing, I mean, I'll take a 30-30 season from Francisco Lindor any day.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a truly great player who's
yeah,
at some point, after his career, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and
mhm,
deservedly so. He is getting older.
yeah,
So there will be some sort of lag in his game at some point. But right now he should be, near the height of his powers. So the Mets, for the next few years should have a very good player there. Um,
mhm,
Defensively, I don't think he had his usual year. Um, there were some lapses, and that happens, and we'll see if he can clean that up next year. But overall,
yeah.
he's a very good player.
Oh no, he's an amazing player, and like you said, I think he is going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. Francisco Lindor is. I'm happy to have, really happy to have
Yeah,
him on this team. He's one of my favorite players. So yeah, I'm very excited. Let's get into another gritty topic here, and that is Tariq Skubal. Now, this is a guy that has. There's a lot of rumblings around. There's a lot of talk about Tariq Skubal, and is he available? Is he unavailable? We know that the Tigers and Tariq Skubal, I believe it was 250 mil. That was the gap in the negotiations. What do you think about a Tariq Skubal with the Mets? Do you think that they should go after him for like right away? Do you think like if he's available, do you just trade the farm for him, or what do you think about that?
well, look, I mean, any trade for this guy is going to really hurt. He is a special pitcher. When he wins the AL Cy Young Award winner, he'll be the only the fifth guy in AL history to win back-to-back Cy Youngs in the American League. That's, the other guys are like Pedro and Roger Clemens and Jim
Yeah.
Palmer. Those are three of them. It's so he's ridiculously good. He's exactly what the Mets need in terms of roster construction. They need a reliable ace like presence at the top of their rotation who can sort of lessen the pressure on Nolan McClain going forward, and also just kind of be the guy that the staff can lean on, as opposed to, last year the Mets had 3 pitchers pitch over 100 innings. Nobody, I think they were high 160s was David Peterson I think he was the leader, and Clay Holmes, who everybody spent most of the season complaining about how he can't get, doesn't pitch deep into games. He was second with like 166 or whatever it was. And, so the Mets need a guy who can get them 190 or so, and at a level that Skubal pitches at, which is, near to unhittable these days. And oh, by the way, he's been great in the postseason the last 2 years as well. There's nothing not to like about this guy except the price tag. And if you're a prospect hugger, you're going to, everybody's going to be mad about who the Mets might have to give up. I would try to make it so McClain is not in this deal, but everybody else has got to be in play in some way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you give 7 prospects for him, but I mean, if the Tigers say, hey, we want Jet Williams, Carson Benj, and either Jonah Tung or Brandon Sproat, the Mets have to think hard about doing that. And I know that that's a shocking amount of prospect talent, but prospects exist, Randy, to make the major league team better, whether that's by becoming a star on the major league team, a useful player on the major league roster, or a trade chip. Doesn't matter how. That's what they exist for. You can't hold on to every single one of them. I always get into arguments with people about this. Like, every single guy is not going to be the next Juan Soto. Every single guy is not the next Jacob deGrom with health. Like, it's just not. It's not that way. You might get one. Maybe Nolan McClain is something like that. And, but you have to use those guys, or they wither. They sort of wither on the vine in some cases. Some guys aren't good enough to be that. And wouldn't you have rather traded them? So in summation, Randy, they should get Skubal, and it's going to be painful. And people who love prospects are going to be very unhappy.
Oh, no,
I think Skubal pitch.
Yeah, no, I mean, woof. Yeah, I mean, if you could get a Tariq Skubal with a Nolan McClain, I mean, that to me is gonna look amazing, and I would love to see a Tariq Skubal with Nolan McClain, But I really like Tariq Skubal. I think everybody does. He's one of the best pitchers in the game, probably the best pitcher in the game, either from Tariq Skubal or Paul Skeens. Those are the 2 guys that are the best pitchers in the game to me. And I think Skubal, what you saw him, like you said, what he did in the playoffs. I mean, 14 strikeouts in the wild card game. Yeah. That is a wild thing, and I love that. And I personally, I would love to have him, but yeah, you're gonna have to give him up. You're gonna have to give up the farm. You're gonna have to give up some prospects, and like you said, not every prospect is going to be I mean, Rosario was a top prospect before.
He was the top prospect in baseball,
the top prospect in the game, and look where he is now. A utility player, not much. And sometimes, Sixto Sanchez was a top prospect, one of the top prospects as well. He's been injured, and where has he been? I mean, so sometimes you don't know what they're going to give you. You don't know what they're going to give you, but
let's make this point too, Randy, that the Mets need to be looking to win immediately. This isn't like years for, our window is coming up. The window's open now. Yeah. You didn't sign Juan Soto and give him all that money. You've got Francisco Lindor in his prime. You have these other guys, who are contributors on the roster. Like, they're not around so that you can sort of tread water until the kids are ready and everybody's a star from the system. Like, that's not how this should be working. I'm not smart enough to know what the impending labor situation, how that will impact baseball beyond the 26th season after the collective bargaining agreement expires. But 2026 is a big year, and having him on the Skubal on the team and trying to win it all in 2026 seems like a great plan for a Mets team that has won the World Series exactly twice in its history. So
Yes.
that,
Yes.
I know that nobody wants to mortgage the future. Nobody wants to mortgage the future. Well, the Mets actually have a lot of prospects now. Even after they made all those trades at the deadline, they've got a lot of people, a lot of players who are well thought of in the industry, in their system. Now's the time to use them, and this is one way to use them.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think they have one of the best farm systems in the game. But if there's a guy like a Tariq Skubal available, I think you got to go for him. You got to
Yeah,
go for him. Like you said, the window. You got Lindor, who's only getting older. Pete Alonso, who's only getting older. Who knows? Maybe. And then you got other players like a Brandon Nimmo.
right.
But Soto is young, but you got Nimmo, you got McNeil, you got these guys that are only Sean Manaea, only getting older when it comes to that. So I think if he's available, you got to go for Tariq Skubal. But then there's another guy, Sandy Alcantara. What do you think about maybe go a different route? Would you like, let's say Tariq Skubal doesn't is not available. Let's say the Tigers wait to the trade deadline to trade him, and the Mets, they need pitching. They need pitching, and if a Sandy Alcantara is available, would you go for him?
Yeah, I mean, he last year was his comeback from Tommy John, so he was getting himself together, and by the end, he looked like his old self, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would cost as much in terms of talent as Skubal, but he is a dynamite pitcher. When he's 100% healthy, he's a innings devourer, so he could give you that sort of 7+ innings guy, at the top of the rotation. So yeah, I mean, I would look. They need this. They need an ace type so badly, Randy.
Yeah.
I just hope that their plans are not to thrift, the rotation again this offseason. And they've got a lot of guys
Oh.
who are sort of lingering, who are still around, who will, could impact in some way, and we'll see ultimately what happens with all of them. But they really need a standout. And
Yeah.
if Skubal is not the guy, then certainly an Alcantara trade is a great idea. There's some names on the free agent market, and that's one of the beauties of free agency.
Mhm.
The Mets are a rich team with Steve Cohen as their owner. Like
Yeah.
it's money to buy Framber Valdez, for instance, who would be my
Yes.
pick off the free agent market. And then you get to keep your prospects if you're so wound up about the prospects, like clutching the pearl. We can't possibly give up this guy or this guy. Then pay the money. And
Yeah.
pitching contracts are notoriously dangerous. There's a laundry list of guys. Not every long free agent pitcher contract is going to turn out to be Max Scherzer with the Nationals, which is the greatest pitching contract ever. When he was so great for so long for them, and they won the World Series. It's probably not going to work out that way, whoever the Mets
Yeah.
sign. But if you get an incredible performance and a title run, in the first couple of years of the deal, maybe it's okay to suffer at the end part of the deal, and you're paying a large sum for a guy who can't be what he was at the beginning. Age comes for us all, Randy.
Oh yeah, no, no, definitely. And my next topic is pressure on David Stearns. There's a lot of pressure on David Stearns.
Absolutely,
What do you
rightfully
think
so.
of what did you think about his last press conference? That last press conference. How did he look to you? Did he look humble? Did you see a difference in the confidence of David Stearns from the previous?
No, I don't
No?
think so. No,
Okay.
I thought he one of the things that he tried to do in that thing is to make the point, and it's a fair one about the team going forward here, about run prevention.
Yeah.
And how much of a big deal that is going to be. I think, look, defense is one of those things in baseball that it's not nearly as sexy as, hitting home runs or, scoring 10 times in a game. And, so sometimes I'm guilty of it. And I think plenty of other people are. We sort of undercut defense. It's like, oh yeah, defense, it's so cute. It's great when you have it.
Yeah.
And, but give me some slug. But
Yeah.
I think that, Stearns has mentioned multiple times in the past that the Mets will be a better defensive team. We're going to take steps to do it. And I thought that he, in that last presser, he went out, he was making it clear again that run prevention was king. And now of course, it's up to him to make the right, and his front office to make the right run prevention decisions here and the right fixes. Yeah. And, we should, the Mets weren't a great defensive team. And, they've still got some spots on their roster that are light defensively. And we'll see how they seek to improve it. I think that's a big part of this offseason is how that all sorts itself out. But to your original point, Randy, there's tons of pressure on this guy now. They signed the richest free agent in history last year and had a dud of a season. Who's the facing front guy of baseball operations? It's David Stearns.
Yeah, so and I mean, Steve Cohen, to me, he got to be pissed off. I mean, Steve Cohen has to be pissed off this season, not making the playoffs. You went to the NLCS in 2024.
Well, you're not, the previous year guarantees you nothing,
No, you're right. But then you signed,
different.
Juan Soto, like you said, you signed Juan Soto.
Yeah, they should have expected to go to the playoffs this second year, and it didn't happen. And, I mean, I certainly can't speak for the owner about, his state of mind in terms of the team, how he feels about the team and what happened. But, he put out that statement after the season about being disappointed and everything. And they're going to find all the reasons, obvious and not so obvious, why the team failed and what to do to get better. Now it's on his handpicked guy to do it.
No, definitely is. I mean, this, like you said, handpicked guy. And when it comes to David Stearns, this guy is not used to giving long-term contracts. And if a Tariq Skubal wants a long-term contract, is he willing to do that? I mean, you saw Yamamoto. That was a younger guy. That was I believe, he was young. He was like 25, I believe. Yamamoto, or the 20 around there. He was a young age, and he was willing to give him a long-term contract. But a guy like a Tariq Skubal, is he 30 or 29? I think I saw that he's 30. So is he willing to give him a long-term? Is he willing to give a Shane Bieber a long-term contract, a Framel Valdez, a Joe Ryan, these type of guys? Is he willing? I don't know if he's willing to go that long-term route. And I know he wants to gain that sustainable success with these young pitchers. And you got McLean, you got Brandon Sproat, you got Jonah Tong. But I think you need guys that are proven. I think you need guys that you can count on, that have a track record, not these reclamation projects. Okay, you hit it on the note with Clay Holmes, who was knifing all of ERA. Clay Holmes did a great job for the New York Mets.
He had a very good year.
Very good year.
He had a way underrated year.
Hats off to him. And then there's another guy, to me, the two moves that he made, David Stearns, because to me, it was a horrible year for David Stearns. A horrible year. And Brooks Raley and Clay Holmes, those to me were his only successful moves. Obviously, the bullpen, nobody would have saw Ryan Helsley just becoming a horrible bullpen pitcher. But Rogers was good, and Mullins.
The deadline was weird because on the surface, everything they did was exactly what they needed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I was seeing it at the time.
Bullpen is a great way to win in October. It's a great way to get there. They had so many relief options after the bullpen had been, kind of like a cause for concern at times during the year. And it didn't work. It was spectacularly failed in a way that I don't think anybody could foresee. And but at the time, I mean, I certainly was trumpeting it, the bullpen moves as being a job well done, and it just goes to show you that how difficult baseball is. And I think that that's something that sometimes when we on the outside forget that it's really difficult to win. It's really difficult to put the right pieces in place to be a team that wins. Yeah. And it's just like you're not guaranteed because because you can spend money. You're not guaranteed to win. You're not guaranteed to make the playoffs. None of that.
The Dodgers spend money, but they got Ohtani. They got so many all-stars.
If you recall, Randy, that everybody was mocking the Dodgers before they won in 2020, the times that they had put together these really great teams and made the World Series and then got
Yeah.
beat in the World Series, everybody was dunking on them on their snarky social media accounts
Yeah.
about the Dave Roberts,
Yeah.
who's laughing now? I mean, Dave Roberts is
Oh, yeah.
making jokes about ruining baseball even more by winning again this year. I
Anthony,
mean,
I hated that.
he is
Anthony,
taking
I
his
hated that.
victory lap.
Anthony, when I heard him say we're 4 wins away from ruining baseball, I was pissed off as a Met fan
I
because I'm
love it. I
like,
love the trolling there. Good job by Dave Roberts, to be
like
honest.
I
All
mean,
they've done is tried to win and get
yeah,
really good players. And you know
yeah,
what? They've also like been really great at developing players too. They've
yeah,
found terrific prospects. They've signed guys off the scrap heap who have worked out. I mean, there's a reason. I say this a lot. There's a reason why other teams want to be the Dodgers, because they're doing
yeah.
almost
You're
everything
right.
right now. They've created an
And
atmosphere too where they're going head to head for a guy like Yamamoto with every other big time team there, and that guy wants to be on the Dodgers, and
yeah, I mean,
they're in
I
a great
definitely, yeah,
spot right now.
he wants to be on the Dodgers. We know that those Japanese players prefer to go on the West at times. But yeah, I think when it comes to the Mets, they got pressure. There's a lot of pressure when it
Yeah,
comes to David Stearns. You have so many holes to fill. Like I said, you have to sign some starting pitching. You got to figure out center field. You got to figure out first base. I mean, there's Edwin Diaz. That's another guy you got to figure out. It's a lot of
I mean,
holes to
there's
fill.
so much bullpen work to be done, Randy. Like if
Bullpen
Edwin
work,
Diaz,
exactly.
yeah, I mean, if Edwin Diaz isn't back, I mean, you're basically replacing almost everybody in the bullpen except for like Brooks Raley, and I guess AJ Minter will be back, which would be a help to them,
Yeah.
certainly. But they've got an incredible amount of bullpen work to do, and if Diaz is not back, then he's one of the, I don't know, three best relievers in
Oh,
baseball, if not the best reliever in baseball.
oh,
So
he had a 1.63 ERA. He
yeah,
is an amazing pitcher. He's 31 years old. He has, I believe it's 3 years remaining on the contract, 28 mil. But then he's probably gonna opt out. But he said he would love to be back. And I think I hope that the Mets feel this way. Like we gotta sign him back. Once the World Series is done and those 5 days is over for those players to opt in and opt out, I think you gotta look at it. I don't want him talking to other teams, Anthony. I don't even want him talking to other teams. I think you need Edwin Diaz. That is your most trusted reliever when it comes to the New York Mets. 1.63 ERA. Yes, he has some times, many times, where he puts you through the Edwin Diaz experience. He
yeah,
loads those bases. And the Cincinnati game, they loaded the bases, but he struck out 3 in a row, or
yeah,
struck out 2, and then he had that ground out. That's a guy to me that you need back on this team. You really need back on this team. But then, but you have so much to do. Like I said, the bullpen, like you said, Brooks Raley, AJ Minter. I think Brooks Raley looked amazing. Brooks
yeah.
Raley looked amazing. AJ
He was
Minter,
such a
you hope he
he
comes
was
back.
Raley was such a boost for them when he came back and pitched so great. That was very impressive what he did.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got AJ Minter, who had the injury, and hopefully he will be back, because before he got injured, he was pitching well. Once he went
Yeah,
down, I
he's a
was like,
talented guy.
come on, man. Like that was supposed to be kind of our setup man at the time, because he was pitching really good. He's pitching really
Yeah,
good. But
yeah.
they have a lot of needs. They have a lot of needs. And I think a lot of Met fans want certain things, and maybe they're going to be disappointed at some things. There's definitely, if we trade a lot of the farm, I'm sure a lot of Met fans are going to be disappointed. But like you said, the window, you gotta win now.
Yeah.
You only got 2 championships, Anthony. 2 championships.
Yeah.
We got to win now.
Yeah,
We got to win now.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's great to hold on to all your guys, like we were saying before, but I mean, if you build a team that you think has a chance to win the World Series, and it needs something glaring like a starting pitcher, it's incumbent upon the people who run the team to go get that player.
For
And
sure.
you know,
For sure.
that's what they have to do here. You know, and I mean, listen, this is going to be a fascinating offseason for a few people on the team too, as well. I mean, we touched on Vientos a little bit earlier. You know, but what's his role going forward? Where does Ronnie Mauricio fit in going forward? What about Luis Angel Acuna? The last two guys there, Acuna and Mauricio, had kind of odd seasons. I think the Mets kind of did both of them a disservice this year. You know,
Oh,
Mauricio was basically sitting around doing nothing in a season where he needed to play a lot of baseball because he was coming off of his knee injury, and he spent a lot of time on the big league bench. And you know, I understand why they called him up, and you know, whatever, but they didn't give him any chance to develop really. And you
no,
know,
they
I
didn't.
feel like this was kind of
They
a
didn't.
lost year for a very intriguing prospect. And
I,
Acuna to me is a guy who I feel like the Mets have kind of pigeonholed him as a, you know, oh yeah, he's our defensive replacement late
yeah.
and pinch runner. And I'm like, I mean, you know, I was at the ballpark talking to a scout during the season, and you know, I asked him what he thought about the guys that we've mentioned, including Brett Beatty and Vientos
Yes.
and Mauricio, and he was like, you know, he's like, I think Acuna could be a star. It's like
I
he's
think
like,
I think he could. I
yeah.
think he
I'm
could.
like, I
I
said,
don't
what?
think the
I,
playing time, Anthony. I don't think he got the playing time that he
yeah,
needs
he
because in the
definitely
beginning,
didn't. And you know, everybody says like, well, you know, he didn't play because he can't hit. And I'm like, you don't
that
get to. You're not a hitter when you never play. And then all of a sudden,
exactly.
it's the eighth inning, and you get an at bat because you came in for defense, and you strike out because it's your first at bat in a week.
Yeah, I
It's very
believe.
difficult to do.
I, I believe that those players they need consistency. Young players need
Yeah,
consistency. When you saw what the Mets did to Ronnie Mauricio to Beatty overall to Ronnie Mauricio to Acuna, those guys Vientos they didn't get a lot of playing time. They didn't get a lot of Ronnie. Like you said, to me, you know, I'm a Ronnie guy. You know, I'm a
yeah,
Ronnie
I know,
guy.
I know
So
you're. I was
you know,
going
I
right
always
into
talk
your
about
wheelhouse
Ronnie. So
with when I brought him up. I knew it.
yeah, no, I'm excited about. I'm still excited about Ronnie. A lot of people could be sleeping on Ronnie, but to me, I'm excited about Ronnie Mauricio, and I think he can be an elite talent. I think he could be a slugger. I think he could be really, really good, but he got to get the playing time. He
Right.
did miss a year and a half of baseball though, so and then you bring him up when he has 5 games, you know, in AAA. Like they called him up too fast. I get it. You had the Vientos injury,
Right.
but and then you didn't that last option. They didn't want to lose that last option, so they kept him. They kept him there. They kept him there, and then they had him. They had him rock. They had him rock. Once Cedric Mullins came to this team, there was no playing time for Ronnie Mauricio. He was just sent to the bench, and Luis Angel Acuna was sent to AAA.
Well, now I wonder what, you know, how do these guys impact the Mets in 2026 now going
Yeah,
forward here? Are they,
yeah,
you know, I mean, listen, David Stearns is not married to any of these guys. He didn't draft them. He didn't make the trades that brought them. He didn't sign them as international free agents
yeah,
or whatever. So, you know, he doesn't have any sort of personal connection to them in terms of that's my guy. That's our, you know, our group picked him, you know, in the first round that year. None of it. So does he? I don't know. Are they chips? You know, and what do
I
you
mean,
believe about what do you believe Brett Beatty is? The guy who took, you know, 3+ or 4 years to get to the majors and actually be a consistent performer. Do you believe that he's now the guy you saw in the second half when he played really well, to his credit? Uh, Improved on his defense at third, I thought, showed that he's athletic enough to play second base, and hit, I think, 18 homers overall in the season. Had a
yeah,
very nice year ultimately. Do you believe that's who he is now, or what did he sort of fuel those numbers with a really good stretch? And
yeah.
he's, you know, I don't know.
It's
And what do other
it's
teams?
tough, Anthony. It's tough because
It is.
you
What do other
had
teams believe about him?
Mark Vientos, who came up in 2024, and then he looked really, really good. He had a great year, 20, I believe 20, was it 27 home runs,
Yeah.
86 RBIs. That is a guy that looked like, oh, 2025, that was good, that was going to be his job. He struggled, and then Brett Beatty he looked really good. Beatty was hitting the ball in the air for the first time in a long time consistently with power. That is what Brett Beatty has been trying to do for years. He was doing it in the AAA level, but he couldn't do it in the major league level. But the defense, like you said, he's one of the best defenders that the Mets have at third base. I like Beatty, but there's no guarantee with him. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get out of him at 2026. I don't know what I'm going to get out of him. Do you take that risk? You know, there's also other guys like Alex Bregman. There's maybe you trade for Nolan Arenado. There's options. I like Beatty. I like Beatty.
To me, a guy like Bregman makes no sense for the Mets just because that's another aircraft carrier contract when what you really need to be spending the money on is pitching and retaining Alonso and Diaz. You know, I know that because of the size of Steve Cohen's wallet, a lot of Met fans have been on the buy everyone plan. You know,
the Dodgers
they should sign everybody.
The Dodgers are doing it.
Well, Alex Bregman's not on the Dodgers. You know,
you're right.
Juan Soto's not on the Dodgers either.
That's true.
So, you know, that to me, that, you know, when you can spend, you spend on your areas of need. You don't have to spend on every single position. And I argument of people in front offices, you know, like the Stearnses of the world, you know, who say like, well, if we have $765 million in right field, then we need to have, you know, major league minimum at third base, and it's okay. Like that's a fair way to operate a baseball business. You don't have to have $100 million contracts at all 9 slots or 10 slots, counting the DH on the diamond. So
no, for sure. I think it's going to be one of the most intriguing off seasons in some time. Obviously 2026, and we don't know if we're going to get baseball in 2027. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But man, Anthony, really appreciate your time. We're going to get out of here. I want to get you out of here at a good time because, you know, I don't want to have you here all day, all night, but really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to come on the channel, come support me. You're awesome, Anthony. You know how it is at SNY. You're always amazing. And man, thank you so much, Anthony.
Oh, you're welcome, Randy. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's always really good to talk Met baseball, especially with people who are this much invested in it as you obviously are. You know, and you know your stuff, so it's great to kick it around. And you know, you're right. This is an intriguing off season. There's going to be so much to pay attention to grind over, to get mad about, to be happy about, all that stuff, which is basically every baseball winter. You know, but this one to me strikes me as one that's a big one for the Mets, and I'm hoping that they do the right stuff here.
Yeah, I'm hoping they do the right stuff too. Oh man, really appreciate it. We're gonna end the stream, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said, thank you, Anthony, again. Thank you guys. Leave a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, like, comment on X, and yeah, man, let's get out of here. Let's go, Mets. Enjoy the baseball on Friday, the World Series, but enjoy. And the Hector said tuned in late, but I'll check the replay.
Attaboy, Hector.
Have a good one, my guy. Have a good one. We're gonna get out of here. But yeah, man. All right.